I walked in as my daughter sat on the floor holding her arm. "He's a boy," my in-law said. She must have said something. They made her say sorry to her cousin who hit her. I smiled, picked her up, left without a word, and 2 days later they got a call that changed everything. Hey Reddit, I was never close to my in-laws. My husband's family was the kind that always held tightly onto tradition even when those traditions crossed into outright injustice. They had this unspoken rule book: boys will be boys. Girls should be quieter, more agreeable, more forgiving. I never quite fit into their mold, but for the sake of my husband and peace I tolerated it. Until that afternoon. It was a Saturday. My daughter Ellie was excited to visit her grandparents. She loved the big backyard, the old tree swing, and even the slightly awkward conversations with her cousins. Ellie is 9, bright, empathetic, funny, and unfortunately often the target of her cousin Liam's aggression. Liam, the golden boy, was 11 and never corrected no matter how harsh she got. We arrived just after lunch. My husband had gone ahead earlier to help his father fix something in the garage, so I walked into the living room alone. That's when I saw her. Ellie was sitting on the carpeted floor, her eyes wide with pain, holding her arm and trying not to cry. Her little body was trembling. My stomach dropped. I rushed to her immediately. "What happened?" I asked, kneeling beside her, checking her arm. Before Ellie could answer, my mother-in-law stepped into the room with that tight-lipped smile she always used when she didn't want to deal with emotions. "He's a boy," she said dismissively, as if that explained everything. Then came my father-in-law's voice from the hallway. "She must have said something. Provoked him." I turned toward them slowly in disbelief. "Provoked him?" I asked, still crouched beside Ellie. Liam stood smugly in the corner with his arms crossed, not even pretending to look sorry. His mother, my sister-in-law Rachel, arrived just in time to say that Ellie should apologize for hurting his feelings. Hurting his feelings? Ellie was the one clutching her arm, for God's sake. Still they circled her like vultures. My sweet girl. They pressured her, coaxed her, guilted her into saying sorry. And Ellie, God bless her gentle soul, whispered, "I'm sorry," even though she had tears in her eyes. I looked at Liam, then at the adults, and then back at my daughter. Something snapped inside me. I smiled. Not because I was happy, but because I realized something important. I was done pretending. Done playing nice. Done hoping they would change. I picked Ellie up carefully, still smiling. She buried her face into my shoulder. Without a single word, I walked past all of them, down the hallway and out the front door. I didn't stop until we were inside my car. I buckled her and got into the driver's seat and finally asked her what had happened. "He shoved me into the table," she said quietly. "He got mad because I picked the purple plate he wanted." That was it. A plate. A plastic cartoon-covered plate. He'd shoved her so hard she fell and hit her arm on the table leg. My vision blurred with fury, but I kept my voice calm. "We're not going back there for a while," I said, gently squeezing her hand. She nodded. Her eyes, always too wise for her age, stared out the window in silence. That night I iced her arm, checked it thoroughly, and made sure she could move it without too much pain. It wasn't broken, thankfully, just bruised, but the emotional wound that ran deep. My husband came home late. I told him everything. And he was defensive. "Liam's just a kid. Maybe he didn't mean," I cut him off. "Ellie's a kid too," I reminded him. "And she deserves to be safe around family." He looked torn but ultimately nodded. "You're right." That night, while Ellie slept curled against my side, I thought long and hard. I couldn't let this be another moment swept under the rug. Not this time. Not when a little girl was taught to apologize for being hurt just because her abuser was a boy. So I made some calls. I called my friend Marcia, who worked at a local child psychologist office. I asked her what steps I could take, not just for Ellie's well-being but to address the environment that allowed this to happen. Then I called the school Liam and Ellie both attended because, yes, they were in the same elementary school. I requested a meeting with the principal and counselor explaining the situation without using names yet, just scenarios, and then I waited. 2 days later I got a call from the school office. Apparently Liam had shoved another student during lunch. This time a teacher had witnessed it. The school was conducting an investigation and they were asking if I'd be willing to share the prior incident between Ellie and Liam. I didn't hesitate. I gave a full statement. And then they called Liam's parents and grandparents in for a meeting. That was the call that changed everything. My in-laws were furious. Not at Liam, at me. They called my husband raging about how I had shamed the family, how I'd overreacted, how I was poisoning Ellie against them. My husband finally stood up for us. She didn't overreact, he told them. You all did. They tried guilt. They tried silence. And then they tried inviting us to dinner to talk it out, which was code for let's pretend it never happened. I refused. No, I said. Not until Ellie gets an apology from everyone in that room and until Liam is held accountable. They laughed, said I was being dramatic, that I was letting emotions cloud my judgment, but I wasn't clouded. I was crystal clear. This wasn't about a plate. This wasn't about one bruise. This was about a system, a sick, broken mindset that taught boys their actions were excusable and girls their pain was insignificant. I wasn't going to let that mindset grow roots in my daughter's heart. Days turned into weeks, and during that time Ellie blossomed. She started therapy. She opened up about things I didn't even know she'd been bottling inside, little moments, comments and dismissals from family visits that had chipped away at her self-worth. We talked. We healed. We found our own peace without them. But just when I thought they'd bury the issue under silence and pride, something else happened. An anonymous report had been filed about Liam's behavioral issues, not just from school but from extracurriculars, even a neighbor, and that snowball started to roll downhill. Suddenly my in-laws weren't angry. They were scared of what else might come to light, scared of the consequences they'd never expected for protecting the golden boy, and that was when the true reckoning began. The anonymous report shook the family. While they didn't know it came from me, deep down I'm sure they suspected, but I didn't care anymore. I wasn't looking for revenge. I was looking for change. And if fear was the only thing that could force accountability, then so be it. The school launched a more formal behavioral review. Liam's teacher admitted there had been multiple incidents swept under the rug due to pressure from his mother Rachel, who volunteered often and was considered a model parent by those who only saw the surface. But the truth was finally surfacing. Parents of other children began to step forward. Stories echoed mine. Liam being aggressive, controlling, manipulative, but always protected by his family. Ellie, meanwhile, became the quiet center of attention in a storm she hadn't asked for. I made sure to shield her from as much as I could, keeping her out of the school's meetings, out of the back and but kids talk. And despite my efforts, she overheard some of the gossip one day. Am I in trouble? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. No, baby, I said, kneeling down to her level. You're the bravest person I know. None of this is your fault. She nodded, but her eyes stayed clouded. So I took her hand and said something I should have said earlier. You don't ever have to say sorry when someone hurts you, especially not just because they're older or stronger. You didn't do anything wrong. That night she drew a picture, her standing tall with a cape, Liam tiny and scowling in a corner. She titled it "I'm Not Afraid Anymore," and neither was I. The real shift came a week later when CPS contacted Rachel. It wasn't just about school bullying anymore. One of the neighbors had reported seeing her scream at Liam violently during an argument in the front yard. The mask of perfection was slipping, and it didn't stop there. The principal called a community meeting with parents to address school bullying and how parental denial contributes to unsafe environments. Rachel didn't show up. My in-laws did, and they didn't like what they heard. People whispered. Eyes turned. They were no longer the respected elders of a proud family name. Now they were the enablers, the ones who let a child get hurt and demanded an apology from the victim. That same night my father-in-law called my husband. You need to tell your wife to fix this, he snapped. But my husband had changed too. No, he said. You need to tell your grandson to stop hurting people, and you need to stop protecting him when he does. The call ended there. No resolution. Just silence. Then another call came, but not to us. The school board requested a formal behavior intervention plan for Liam. Therapy, supervised interactions, and temporary suspension from extracurriculars. Rachel exploded. She blamed everyone, teachers, parents, even me, but it didn't matter anymore. The system she thought she controlled was pushing back. A few days later my husband received a shaky call from his mother. She wanted to meet. She wanted to apologize. I wasn't sure what to expect, but I agreed. We met at a small park. Neutral ground. She looked tired, older somehow. And for once there was no superiority in her eyes. I didn't understand. She began fiddling with the strap of her purse. I really thought boys just acted out sometimes. And girls are supposed to take it. I asked calmly. She looked away. I'm sorry for what we did to Ellie. She didn't ask me to drop the school complaints or to help her family's image. She just looked truly deeply ashamed. I nodded. I hope you mean it, I said. Because Ellie remembers and so do I. She asked if she could apologize to Ellie in person. Only if Ellie wants to hear it, I said. This is her healing, her decision. That night I told Ellie everything. She listened quietly and then asked one question. Will Liam say sorry too? I was honest. I don't know. Then I don't want to see them yet, she said. And that was the end of it for now. We went on with our lives. We switched Ellie to a new class. Her confidence returned slowly like spring after a long winter. She made new friends. She laughed again. She didn't flinch when someone bumped into her. Months passed. Then one Sunday afternoon while we were baking cookies there was a knock on the door. I opened it to find Rachel alone. She looked hollow. No makeup, no sharp tone, just a woman weighed down by the truth. I know I'm the last person you want to see, she said. But I need you to know I failed my son and I failed Ellie and I'm sorry. I said nothing. Just waited. He's been in counseling. He hates it. He blames everyone but himself. But I can see it working slowly. And I think part of the reason I protected him so hard was because I saw too much of myself in him. She looked past me into the house at the sounds of Ellie giggling in the kitchen. Tell her I'm sorry, she said, or don't. Just tell her she's stronger than I ever was. She turned and walked away. And I stood there with the scent of cookies wafting through the doorway and the sound of my daughter laughing and felt something I hadn't felt in months: closure. It didn't undo what had happened. It didn't erase the pain, but it was something. We still don't attend family events. Ellie's comfort comes, and while my husband visits occasionally, he never pushes me or Ellie to go. He knows where we stand and he stands with us now. As for Liam, maybe he'll change. Maybe he won't. But I no longer feel responsible for teaching that lesson. His mother finally took the step. And Ellie, she's thriving. She joined the school art club. She talks about becoming a counselor someday. She says she wants to help kids feel heard. I tell her she already does. And every time I see her stand tall, laugh loud, or say no without guilt, I remember that day, her on the floor holding her arm. And I remember the smile I wore as I picked her up and walked away. Because sometimes the most powerful move a parent can make is refusing to stay silent.